Welcome. It is no accident that you have found your way to the Release the Genie podcast. What would you do with 3 wishes? And what if you discovered that you are in fact that very genie that could grant them? Well, join us now as we discover who our next genie is as we listen in and learn the stories of triumph, inspiration, and passion with some very special guests. And now, without further delay, your host of the Release the Genie podcast, Mr. Paul Rogers.
So good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're watching. You are not going to believe the fantastic genie I have today. This is a guy who slips being a genie like putting on a favorite jacket. He is the bestseller author of, I will just have to hold up his book. It's the wonderful Go-Giver, of which I've read the entire series. And if you have been living in a cave, hey, it's lockdown, you need to get these books. And it's been translated into 28 different languages. It's sold a massive 950,000 copies. Not only does he do this, he does courses, podcasts, live feed on Facebook. So welcome to today's genie, the wonderful Bob Burg.
Hey, thank you, Paul. What an honor to be with you. You're one of these great guys, and you just set a fantastic example for all of us.
Well, that's super kind, and I am deeply honored and humbled by your very kind words. So let's get going on this. So tell us a little bit about your good self, Bob.
Began as a young child. No,
As do we all.
Yeah. No, professional career began as a broadcaster. I was on radio and then television, but I really wasn't very good at that, and I wasn't long for that. I graduated into sales, found that I didn't know about sales and didn't know that I didn't know about sales because I didn't know there was a thing to know about it. And so I floundered for the first few months or so. And then one day, being in a bookstore, and I don't know what I was exactly looking for, but I knew I was looking for something. I happened to find a couple of books on selling. Now, this was 40 years ago almost, and it was just not as plentiful back then as it is now. I didn't know there was such a thing as books on selling or how to do that. I just thought you knocked on doors, talked about your product, and blah, 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 right? Which is, of course, the opposite of being a sales professional. But I got these 2 books. One was by Tom Hopkins, one was by Zig Ziglar, and I made a complete study of them. And I would just come home after work and just till the wee hours of the morning, reading, studying, dog-earing, highlighting, note-taking, rehearsing, and practicing. And within a few weeks, my sales really began to go well, which showed me that if you had a methodology, a system, if you will, for accomplishing something, you could pretty much accomplish whatever you wanted to, assuming you had the basic skill set, for it. I mean, I always wanted to be third baseman for the Boston Red Sox growing up, but that wasn't going to happen because I didn't have the basic tools, right, for that. But within reason, there pretty much isn't anything we can't learn to do if we want to badly enough. So, from there, really began getting into personal development. Eventually, worked my way up to sales manager of another company, and started teaching people what was working for me, and kind of morphed into a speaking career. So that's, and then books kind of end up coming as a result of that.
That's awesome, and I can certainly say that, having read a lot of your books and putting those skills into practice, I can tell you, viewers, they really work. So if you haven't, as I said, got into this, you are doing yourself a disservice. So what was your release the genie moment, your aha thing on your journey?
Well, I think it was really a couple of years, Paul, after I got started in selling. And remember, I was doing pretty well because I learned how to sell, and I started studying it, and I was doing well. But I joined another company, and it was a high ticket item, good product. I felt really proud to be representing it, but I was in a slump, a sales slump. And anyone who's been in one of those knows how frustrating and nerve-wracking and panic-inducing that can be. And I really started focusing on myself, and which of course is the worst thing to do when you're in a slump, and the worst thing to do in selling, focusing on yourself. And I remember coming back to the office one day, very frustrated after a non-selling appointment. It was supposed to be a selling appointment, but because of my own ineptness, it turned into a non-selling appointment. And I was in I guess it was the sales waiting room. This is, again, almost 40 years ago now. So I'm not sure I have all the facts totally straight, but this I do know, that one of the older gentlemen there, and he was not in the sales department, I think he was in the engineering department, but he was really, really nice guy, but he didn't say much, and I didn't know him really well. But one of these people, and I'm sure you've known people like this, that whenever he did say something, it was always profound, right? So when he asked me, Burg, he was a last name kind of guy. He said, "Burg, can I give you some advice?" Because I think he saw me as sort of like a Joe in The Go-Giver that I'd later write, with John David Mann years and years later, right? But he saw as that guy who was kind of the young, up and coming, lots of potential, ambitious, aggressive, and hardworking, but very frustrated, right? Like Joe in the story. And I think he saw me intuitively as that. And he said to me, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target, he said, is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, you'll get a reward, and that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose, but never forget, he said, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It ain't the target itself. Your target is serving others.
That is wonderful.
Yeah. See, that's when it hit me.
Yeah.
That great salesmanship is never about the salesperson, right? Great salesmanship is never about the product or service, as important as the product or service is. But that's not what the sale's about. And great salesmanship, you know what it is about? It's about the other person. It's about focusing on touching the life of another human being. It's about making that person's life better just by virtue of you being in it. And when we have that kind of focus, Paul, I think we are really 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
I absolutely agree. And producing massive value as a primary goal, you're absolutely right. The money becomes a byproduct of the value element.
Well, John David Mann and I both say that money is simply an echo of value.
Yeah.
It's the thunder, if you will, to value's lightning, which means nothing more than that the value must come first. That's your focus. The value you're providing another human being comes first. The money you receive is simply a result of it's a very natural result of the value you've provided.
And it echoes Napoleon Hill's value and money elements. So that's wonderful. So what's your favorite quote, or your release the genie type quote or mantra?
I would say that it's something I learned from Zig Ziglar. It's Zig's most famous quote, probably. It's often his most misquoted quote, which always annoys me. So the actual, because it's so brilliant, it's like, I hate the idea that it's just not, the actual quote, what he said is, you can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want.
That is amazing, and I can see the echo, as you say, in the Go-Giver of putting other people first. So no, I can see how it all knits together now.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps you can sort of share with us one of your setbacks, because things don't always go on an upward staircase. So
sure.
Show if you can tell us one of your setbacks or something you've had to overcome.
Well, one of the things I think about in my speaking business happened in the kind of, I guess it was it'd be more late 90s. And it's when the internet was really starting to now become part of life. It was really mainstream, right? It was more than just, you've got mail. Now, it was all the, right? And, I'm sort of a techno scaredy cat. I'm on social media all the time and I'm on the internet all the time, and I'll explain how that got to be. But back then, that was not something I was interested in doing. It was scary to me because I'm not tech oriented, so to speak. So, at the time I had a really good, profitable speaking business that I'd built up, and I saw this change happening and I didn't want to change. And, and it's interesting because I know one of the, the sacred personal development mantras is, embrace change, and change is great. And the only thing, that constant is change, and all those great things. But, I hate change. I like to get good at something, nail it, and then rinse and repeat. Okay. But that's not what was happening. And I refused to do so, thinking, oh, I've got a big enough business now. My clients will stay with me. Nothing's going to, well, I think we can guess what happened next. And I basically had to rebuild my business. And, the lesson that I got from it, and I'm not sure it was a new lesson. I think it was a lesson that I relearned because I knew it before, which makes it even worse, right? To have to make the same mistake more than once. But the lesson is really, you don't have to like change. That's not the requirement. You don't have to like it. You just have to be willing to do it if you want the desired results. And so, that now, now it's a big part of what I do, of course. And I'm my business partner, Kathy Tajanel, who
Yes.
She's a genius. And when it comes to technology, she just makes it so simple and easy. So she kind of creates that environment where I'm able to do what I do best, and so forth. But yeah, that was a tough lesson to relearn.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's people talk about habits and all sorts of things, and trying to learn new habits, but it always seems that bad habits happen all by themselves. You don't need to learn those.
Absolutely, no, we don't need to learn those.
But the good habits, there seems to be so much more emphasis on trying to learn those.
Yeah.
So, no, I can definitely see. So, Bob, look, I know you've got lots of stuff going on. What's going on at the moment? What's cooking in your world at the moment?
Well, Kathy and I have two projects we're really excited about. One we've been doing for a while now. That's a certified Go-Giver speaker program where we show basically people who are already successful in business and they want to become a professional speaker. They want to do it utilizing the intellectual properties of the Go-Giver and endless referrals and genuine influence and things that, we've been putting together for years. And so we have a really great team of certified Go-Giver speakers. So we just love that. More recent is our newest course called Endless Referrals, the Go-Giver Way. And that's an online video course. So we're very excited about that.
No, I've been through the free one which you put on there, and
selling the Go-Giver Way.
Yeah, and that was amazing, and it comes in sort of the parts and bite-sized pieces. So you actually at the end you can all fit things together. So yeah, no, if you haven't done that, people, then take advantage of it. It's a really good way to get into the Go-Giver world. So thank you very much for that gift for everyone.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So now we move to the really fun part of the show, and I couldn't help but notice that you're wearing the Genie blue today. So
yes.
Subliminally, we knew the score.
Yes.
So I get to ask you 3 wishes, and so you get to grant them as my all-powerful genie. So the first one, which we kind of touched on earlier, was what was the best advice you've ever received?
Well, so it was great advice from that gentleman who told me, but I really think the best advice I ever received was not something that I was told, but something I observed, because I'd always gotten to observe my dad, who I say has the greatest when it comes to people skills that I've ever seen. Very natural for him. Okay. With me, I had to really learn them, but for him, I think he just had a gift with that. And I just saw how he would treat people, anyone who he met, and his focus was really always on them, and it was genuine. He genuinely cared how they were doing and what their issues were, and how. And I would say that what he did is he made people feel genuinely good about themselves. So the piece of advice would be that, again, he didn't say, but what I extrapolated from that is that the single greatest people skill is a highly developed and authentic interest in the other person.
And really good, because it's the listening, not to ask your question, but listening to understand their position.
Mm-hmm.
See, and Go Giver Sales, it's and I must admit, I just have to quote one piece which I thought was just fantastic advice, which was, how do you find your perfect customer? You don't, they find you. Which, I mean, it's stuck in my mind as being one of my favorites. So yes, let's move on to our second wish, which is, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, that one's probably about the easiest I could ever come up with. I think of the 20 to 22, 23-year-old Bob Burg, and I hate to sound rude, but I would say, young Bob Burg, shut up. Stop talking, stop thinking you know everything, because you don't. And to paraphrase a quote that's misattributed to Mark Twain, okay, most of the things that you're absolutely positively sure you do know just ain't so. Because I really thought I had it nailed. I thought I understood human nature, and I thought I understood economics, and I thought I understood business, and I thought I understood everything. And I didn't.
Oh, it's so true. I got asked on a podcast. I said all this, this is what I would do. And then the guy said, do you think you would have listened to yourself if you met yourself from the future?
Right. That's a great question.
And I said, not a chance, because I thought I knew it all. So, yeah, I think our adolescent younger selves, they need to listen a bit better. So I'm going to move on to my third wish, and this is going to be a really good one for people to buy into, which is, what's one habit which you attribute to your success?
I think reading probably has a lot to do with it.
No, I think you're right. It's that thirst for knowledge, becoming more aware.
Yeah. And of course, it's, you have to apply what you read. It can't just be reading, or it can't just be listening to this or listening to that or buying the newest witchamahoozy. You've got to apply it. But so I think that's something I've done, is, apply the information. But it began with actually reading and making that a habit.
And you're absolutely right. And books are a gift, a calling card almost. I just show you very quickly the Adversaries to Allies, which I read fairly recently, actually. And I had a situation where I had to actually apply it to a hostile thing. And it was a very simple thing, not to give anything away, but also to encourage people, is positively framing something.
That's a big thing.
And that it's all about the communication, as you say.
Yeah. Yeah, and it begins with the frame, or even resetting someone else's negative frame. And a frame, by definition, is simply the foundation from which everything else transpires. So if you set a proper frame, or again reset someone else's negative frame, you're really 90% of the way to achieving what you want.
No, it's a really nice way to forget all the negotiation tactics you learned at law school and everything else, because actually there is that other way.
Well, it's funny. There's a guy by the name of Mitch Jackson, who is he's a litigation attorney. He was at one time the California Litigator of the Year, and he's an amazing human being who is just, people skills wise, this guy, he could have written the book as far as I'm concerned. But he actually, when he coaches lawyers, he actually insists that they read Adversaries into Allies before he'll work with them, which I just take as a wonderful compliment, because Mitch is just so fantastic when it comes to that. And really shows that the skill that really separates the reasonably successful from the ultra, stratospheric successful really is people skills. And it's got to come from a genuine base, though. It cannot be manipulative and be sustainable. It's got to come from a genuine place, and that's Mitch Jackson.
I always, one of the things which I always, people do business with people they like, and that's always the same. No, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Those wishes there, I mean, people can dine out on them for a long while. So that's awesome. So what I'd like you to be able to do now is, could you share a book which you could recommend to the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough in a way because there are so many wonderful books that I love. Here's one that is one of my all-time favorites that anyone and everyone would benefit from. It was actually written back in 1900 by Orson Swett Marden, who actually was the founder of Success Magazine. And many people consider him to be the founder of the self-improvement, personal development industry, if you will. It's called Peace, Power, and Plenty. And when you think about it, that includes, if you will, the basics of what we desire. We want inner peace, right? We do want power within ourselves, and we want plenty. We want to be abundant, and in all the ways that abundance can be measured. So Peace, Power, and Plenty by Orson Swett Marden. It's such a treasure. I wouldn't even write in the book. I wouldn't even make notes in the book. I just wrote notes on the actual yellow sticky notes that I put in there because it's an original edition. But that is one that I would recommend to everyone.
And also a very good tip there to actually write on the sticky notes rather than mark up the actual pages.
Well, I've got to tell you, I'm someone who writes in books a lot. Okay, I do that, and I also write notes on the sticky notes. But I often write in books and I highlight and I underline. But in this case, I mean, it's for those watching this on video, it is a first edition and it's a beautiful, magnificent book. So I didn't want to do it in that case.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. It sounds like a fascinating book. So
every line is a treasure.
I'm going to dive into that myself. So thank you for a wonderful recommendation. So Bob, I know you're on social media, but where is the best places to get hold of you to really get into your world on this?
Probably my website, Burg, BURG.com. You can find my books there where you can get a free chapter and an excerpt. My blog, which is mostly videos at this point. I also have a podcast. And if they scroll down to the bottom, they'll find where they can connect with me on social media if they'd like, because I'm on a few different ones. So yeah, I welcome people to come to Burg.com and hang out and have some fun.
That's amazing. And whilst I was scrolling through the internet today, your book of The Go Giver has its own Wikipedia page.
We didn't put it there. Somebody must have just
done that. How cool is that? I was like, wow.
Cool.
Okay. Well, look, Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure to take a peek inside your wonderful world and to be able to get to meet you. As I confessed off air, I'm a fan, so excuse everyone who's watching who thinks it's slightly gushing. Well, I didn't want to be a groupie, so I dialed it back down. But no, I thank you very much for taking the time and for being today's Genie for us.
Thank you so much, Paul. Appreciate you greatly.
Thank you. And guys, we'll see you next time. Stay tuned for some more fantastic guests. Today's Genie, ladies and gentlemen, for the last time, has been Bob Burg, and thank you very much.
Well, that's a wrap. You have been listening to yet another episode of the Release the Genie podcast with host Paul Rogers. Be sure to follow Paul on the LinkedIn platform and learn more of Paul's resources at www.geniepodcast.com. www.takeactionacademy.ca. And until next time, as always, be mindful and be sure to release your genie. Thanks for listening.